Objective. Today I've got Mark with me. How's it going, Mark?
Hey, how are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm a bit miffed that my setup has decided not to work. So if it sounds like we've gone back a few months to when I'm speaking through a toaster, I'm sorry, everybody, about that. We'll
Mhm.
get it sorted out for tomorrow, or for Sunday, rather. So today we're talking, talking about something that's happened to the channel, which I don't think has ever happened before, which is that we've been banned from TikTok, or at least suspended. Daniel will have to tell me whether it's a suspension or a full ban. And this is a bit bewildering to everybody because it's not like we share anything explicit or we share anything that I think, it might be politically controversial, but it's not something that could be, I think, designated as hateful in any way and so on. So this is a bit bizarre. Um, and Daniel's saying he has a video. Yeah, so let's play an example of the kind of things that get posted to the TikTok channel because these are the scandalous things that have got us suspended.
We know what Israel basically stands for: democracy, liberty, for the pillars of Western civilization, versus a medievalist, religiously fanatical, nationalistic ideology that holds violence as a means of acquiring values. There can be no compromise between those two. It's either one or the other, because to compromise to the other gives you what we've seen since the beginning of Israel, which is never-ending violence. So you people who are calling for a ceasefire, remember that that's what you are calling for: never-ending violence. That's what you will get. You have left civilization behind us, precisely what the Palestinian people did when they cheered on this mass murder that happened. You left civilization behind. You said, I don't want to negotiate anymore. Now the only way you can come to the negotiating table is when you unequivocally denounce your philosophy and never pursue it again in the future. I have to say I really like that. And Daniel, if there's a way you can email that to me so I can plaster it across my Twitter, that would be fantastic.
Mm. But how does it feel, Mark? You're a cutting edge, controversial guy, it seems. What do you make of your own confidence?
I find them as true now as I did when I said them, and that to me is evidence that what you're saying is true. It stands the test of time, and not that a lot of time has passed, but um, they're true. And there's nothing in there that's I would say rises to the level of a lot of the stuff that I've seen on social media from the pro-Palestinian side. This is just talking. This is, I think, talking in a principled manner, aggressively talking in a principled manner about why I think Israel has the moral high ground, why I think the Palestinians don't, and what they have to do about it. But it's still principles, and I think legitimate in a social media sphere where we're supposed to be talking about ideas, right?
Yeah, and I mean, so as you say, you're aggressively talking about it, but it's not like you're like what you're talking about is you're calling for an end to violence, and you're telling people that what they're in favor of is violence. So there's no way anyone could feasibly understand it as being hateful content or whatever it is that violates the terms of service. And and something that's peculiar about this is that it's not like Razzie received an email either, because normally when you get these kind of strikes against you, whether it's on YouTube or whatever, or something, they let you know and they explain how you dispute it, what the process is going to be, and so on. And there's been none of that, as I understand it. It's just been that when Irene or Daniel or whoever tried to log into the TikTok account, it just said that we were suspended. And so there's something, I don't want to be kind of dramatic about it, but there is something vaguely Kafkaesque about it. No, TikTok's not a government; they're a private company; they can do whatever they like. However, just the fact that you're at fault, and they haven't even told you that you're at fault and for what for, and what you can do about it. There is something just Kafkaesque about it. And so, I mean, what do you think about TikTok in general? Because TikTok is this platform which is kind of decried by a lot of mainstream politicians as, being basically civilization threatening, and is a backdoor for China to influence, the population and how they're voting or to get information on us. What do you think? I mean, do you use TikTok?
No.
No. I mean, do you think it is a threat that people say that it is, or do you not know if you don't use it?
Well, I mean, it's possible that the Chinese government uses the information they're getting there, not so much to influence people, but for whatever reasons an insidious state actor like China would use them for. I have no doubt that they're weaponizing information. But I also don't think people are automatons. I don't think addiction is something that you're hopelessly enthralled to. You know, I think you have complete control over your will, and you don't have to go on TikTok. You don't have to listen to the messaging on TikTok. You're not compelled to. We're not zombies, for crying out loud. It seems like both sides of the political spectrum like to pigeonhole people into determinist camps. And no, I don't think TikTok is it's not the ruination of America in the sense that the politicians mean it. It certainly shows a cultural decline when you see what people are interested in. But I'm not worried about people becoming zombified China bots.
And so I guess so. What's bizarre about the fact that our account has been suspended or banned, given what we're sharing, which is things along the lines of what you just said, which is calling for an end to the war and for an end to violence and so on, is that in effect the position which is wanting the end of conflict and which is advocating for peace, which is what the objectivist position ultimately is. Now, if you want peace, you have to prepare for war sometimes, and you have to be forthright in doing that. But objectivism is not a philosophy which is interested in going to war. It might recognize that you have to, as the final resort, but it's about peaceful coexistence and trading. And if our position then can be demonized in some ways, being hateful, which is what I'm presuming, we violated the terms for or something like that, then that shows a real kind of corruption of the public debate, where one side can say that they just want peace and therefore they want a ceasefire, and therefore the conflict will go on. And we can point out that that is never actually going to lead to the ending of the conflict. And then we can be suspended as being hateful. And this is a complete inversion of terms. These ideas mean, peace means nothing then, if that's the only way you're allowed to use it in these kind of discussions. And let's just do a couple of our super chats. So we've got 199 twice from Robert. Thank you very much, Robert. 99 cents from Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. Then 150 from Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. And 99 cents from Bonnie. And so what do we do about this, Mark? Should we be back on TikTok? Do you think we should bother? Or how do people like us go about advocating for change? And are you concerned about social media in the way that a lot of people are? Because a lot of people will make an argument kind of like Twitter is the public forum, and therefore it's wrong for certain people to be banned from it and all this kind of stuff. Do you think there's a justified concern in that kind of thing, or are these people going over the top?
I mean, I think there's a justifiable concern for allowing the Ayatollah to have a space on Twitter, or the Democratic Republic of North Korea to have a space on there, or Putin, or somebody who is obviously a government entity that doesn't respect rights, a terrible authoritarian dictatorship, or holds principles that would lead to that. Those people have no place on there. But then again, it's a private platform owned by a person who can make whatever rules he chooses to make. I don't think these public forum spaces are a threat to democracy, other than demonstrating how fallen our culture has become, how morally corrupted. If anything, it should be a tonic. You see how far the culture's fallen, and it can be a bit of an inspiration to you who, on the opposite side, to offer some sort of solution. I think we should be on TikTok. I think, TikTok needs a voice like ours. But the fact that we get banned from forums like that, or the fact that my voice gets limited by algorithms in social media, when I think I'm saying very reasonable stuff and stuff that needs to be heard, well, that's scary. And I don't know what to do about it, because it's a private company. I mean, I have ideas about how to fix the misinformation aspect, but I don't know how practical they are.
Let's talk about that then, because that's also one of the big concerns people have. And when people, in effect, advocate for the regulation of these companies, of social media companies, primarily, I think one of the major things that drives that is the idea of misinformation, which I want to say became a big issue, I think about 10 years ago. I think that was when I first started noticeably hearing people use the term fake news. Interestingly, the first person ever who used the term mainstream media was Joseph Goebbels, but that's just a bit of trivia. But what's your ideas for combating the misinformation aspect of it?
Well, I mean, I think we need legal reform, first of all, so that it's easier for people to sue for defamation and for libel. I know that when I was libeled on social media in California, the rules for suing somebody are really, really hard. So the odds are very much against you that you'll be able to prove intent. It's extremely expensive, and then you're stuck with probably paying the lawyer's fees of the other person who probably did libel you on purpose. But I think that social media creates a world in which everybody's a content creator. Everybody, in a sense, becomes a journalist when they pass on information and have followings that are even greater than, say, the readership of the New York Times. I think you should be able to subject that person to some form of scrutiny, some form of legal scrutiny. And I think if we liberalized the laws that enable people to, bring libel suits against somebody who's passing on misinformation about somebody else, because their lives are on the line. I mean, my reputation was on the line when I was put in that situation, and there was nothing I could do about it unless I wanted to spend $500,000 in lawyers' fees and then get an automatic slap suit leveled against me by the other person, and then have to prove intent, which is extremely difficult. So I think they should figure out ways of, you can pass along information. How could you not have the intent of hurting somebody if you pass along something malign? You do have the intent of injuring somebody. You might not think about it too deeply, but if you have enough test cases where people like that with big followings get sued and lose a lot of their revenue to the person they've screwed over, then it might give somebody it might make somebody think before they magnify that voice. So I say liberalize laws, make defamation and libel easier, treat especially big social media influencers as not just content creators, but journalists, because they're passing on information to people, magnifying certain kinds of information.
Do you have any sympathy then for the point of view which wants to change the laws around social media companies being treated as platforms, and rather so change it from them being platforms to them being publishers? Do you think there's any?
No, I don't think that. I don't think they should be the publishers. I think the individuals. I think you can take the individuals on the platform as publishers, because they're the ones responsible for their own content and what goes on there. I mean, look, people went crazy when Nikki Haley was like, we should have universal verification. Even objectivists are nuts about that. But that was one of the things I proposed 5 years ago through the Guardian Project, and not through the government, though, not universal verification through the government, but that if you were on a social media platform, somebody could see all of your profiles, so that they would, because oftentimes a lot of social media agita is built up by a very small group of people using sock accounts to give the appearance of a huge mob believing in something, and that's just fake. It's fraud. It's a form of fraud. So if your profiles could be known, mine are known, for Christ's sakes, everybody knows me, then why can't it be for everybody else? Unless you want to do bad things.
I'm sorry, by the way, if anyone can hear an alarm going off in the background. There's a restaurant just beneath me.
That's okay, but why wouldn't anybody want to be verified unless you want to do bad things? I mean, I can understand if you're in China or if you're in Putin's Russia, you might not want to be identified when you're writing an anonymous article critical of the government. But on social media, making comments, you just want to get away with shit. That's what you want to do.
I think so, probably. But is that the government saying that people have to have the verification, or is that just...
I would urge private companies to do that. I would urge the private companies to have universal verification. Everybody's a check.
Sure.
And you know what? Elon Musk sort of did that by making people pay for the check marks. And then the legacy check marks freaked out because their status was diminished in the eyes of the world.
Yeah. And what do you think about Twitter since Elon Musk has taken over? Because I've only really... I've had Twitter before, but only really in the last 6 months or so have I started using Twitter regularly. And people are saying that it's gotten worse since Musk has taken over, and there's like an increase in hateful content. And some people who I think are credible are saying that, and some people who I think are not so credible are saying that. And so, we know we've spoken before about you having a bit of a headache on Twitter with your interactions with people, and we've done a show about it actually on TRS Extra, which everyone should go check out. And so, what's your experience of Twitter? Because a lot of people then are saying, "Look, Musk has made Twitter worse. We need to ramp up these regulations and so on." What's your experience of Twitter been like?
Yeah, I mean, briefly, I experienced a magnification and seeing voices that I hadn't seen for a long time in the very beginning, and now it's sort of reverted back to its old leftist wave of political leftist protest. That's what I predominantly see, and all the conservatives that I have followed on Twitter, they have exponentially expanded their fan base, right? Their followers went up, I mean, crazy, from 400,000 to 1.2 million. And I was losing followers. So, and I think what I have to say is better than what they have to say, but the market is either the market isn't buying it or Twitter itself is still in that realm where it's just magnifying the voices that are, at each other's throats and not the alternative voices. So I've experienced a net loss under Elon Musk.
Mm. So Daniel's saying some multiplayer games already use this method, usually by a phone number, to combat multiple accounts and cheating. Everyone who has good intentions participates. You don't participate only when you have bad intentions. I can see this expanded to social media. Yeah,
yes, that's my solution.
Yeah, I could imagine something like that. I mean, my Facebook account, I think, already has to have my phone number on it, but I think that's for another reason, because I was running ads, right? So they need you to be verified at least for that. And perhaps that's not a bad way as well, because I know they have this policy. I think you have to be 13 to be on Facebook, and yet everyone I knew before who was 13 had a Facebook account. So, and then Enric Teller gives $5. Thank you, Enric, and says, "Is culture downstream of education? If so, should education be the main focus for long-term good change?" I think so, Mark. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so too. I think Rand was pretty much the first person to point out that academia was corrupt, and that was the source of corruption for our culture, and that's where we had to really put a lot of our focus. But I think we could do both simultaneously. I think we need people in the culture out there, moving and shaking, creating product that people like, and that could have also a positive effect on academia. But academia is the source for sure.
Yeah, and I mean the thing that's extraordinary about reading something like The Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged is, I mean, at least in Atlas Shrugged, the college student, like the nursemaid character, is very much portrayed as one of these people who's gone to university and has kind of picked up a lot of rubbish ideas. And he's an example, I guess, of someone who's better than that. But and then on the flip side of this, when people are talking about the corruption of the mainstream media, in The Fountainhead, you've got the character of Gail Wynand, who, is very much an example of these kind of problems with our media. And so Rand was long on the problems with the media and with education for a long, long time. And there's lots of mainstream conservatives who seem to think the problem started in the 90s. And if you read Rand's novels, she's been convinced that the problems have been there for decades at the very least, and probably even further, before she was even alive, really. And I do think that culture is downstream of education. I think even Plato makes some comment in the Republic about the most powerful person being the person who decides what the education is going to be.
So that makes John Dewey the Ellsworth Toohey of our American culture.
Yeah, very much so. With all this influence he had on it, if the culture is heading in a bad way, if he's had a determining impact on the education, then you really have to hold him culpable for these kind of things. And then we've got a couple more super chats. So Regina gave €2. Thank you, Regina. And Catherine gave $5 and said, "I agree with verification. I just apply for verified." Very good. I actually quite like the Twitter verification thing compared to how it used to be. I don't know, again, I wasn't under the old one, but my understanding was that was just kind of randomly done. Whereas actually getting it done now was quick. It was easy. It comes with some more benefits. I thought it was kind of good. So then Daniel's also posted a comment saying, "Veridiana Carval Hot. This YouTube channel should get demonetized or banned too. You guys promote hate speech and terrorism." Well, look, TikTok's
That's
already
from
done some.
us. Is that directed at us?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So, I mean, TikTok's already done some of that work for you, Veridiana. So, don't worry. But also, look, hate speech is not a valid concept. It, there is speech, and there is speech which is motivated by various things. But a whole separate concept for hate speech, which can be outlawed, is not valid. And we don't support terrorism either. The whole video we just played from Mark is against terrorists, right? So, but people will say whatever they want. I mean, if you look under the comments of the video, sometimes people will say the most outrageous things, and they're just throwing guff into the air. These words don't have to mean anything in their minds very clearly. But do you promote hate speech and terrorism, Mark?
Uh, I promote reason and peace, and I attempt to find the best method of achieving a rational, peaceful society, and that's what I think I'm talking about. I don't think Veridiana would appreciate that. If she supports Hamas and the Palestinian cause, she's promoting a genocidal, hate-filled, bigoted cause. I mean, how can you say that the Palestinians are pro peace or liberty movement when they don't vote in governments that respect individual rights?
Yeah. If anyone would like to go somewhere and experience some hate speech and terrorism, they can move to some of the countries we've been talking about in recent weeks, and any of them which aren't Israel. But okay, we've got about 60 seconds left, and we've got the reality show coming up. It escapes me on the top of my head what we're talking about. Perhaps in the reality show, perhaps Daniel can just remind me. But I hope everyone will just jump over there. And Mark, where can people find you on Twitter?
Mark R. Pellegrino on Twitter, Mark Ross Pelly on Instagram. You could look at my Patreon. I'm going to start talking about the intersection of psychology and philosophy there. I do movie reviews and stuff on there as well. Hopefully we'll have some good interviews there pretty soon. And check out my reality check. I just published one on proportional responses. Veridiana, you should check that out more than anyone else on this feed, just so you know.
For sure. And Daniel's saying we're talking about Candace Owens, and yes, we are. And people seem to enjoy the previous episode we did on Candace Owens, but we're talking about another video which she's put up. And don't worry, everyone. Candace Owens' best friends are Jews, so nothing she ever says could be problematic in any way. So I hope we see everyone over there. Thanks for joining me, Mark, and we'll see everyone tomorrow.
Peace.